Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee. My name is Councillor Justin Wrench and I will be chairing this meeting. I would just like to welcome Councillor Paul Heath, who is a new member to our committee, and thank you for the attendance by everybody this evening. Before we do proceed though to the main business of the meeting, I would like to go through a few items of housekeeping. We are not expecting a fire drill this evening, but if one should sound, please can members exit to the rear of the chamber and assemble on the car park. Please can you make sure that your phones and other devices are switched to silent. If members wish to speak during our debates this evening, please can you indicate by raising your hand and I will come to you at the appropriate time. This meeting is being webcasted. Please can I remind everyone to use their microphones when speaking and switch them off when they have finished speaking to avoid any unwanted interference. I will now proceed to the main business of the meeting. So item 1 is apologies for absence, and we have one apology for absence this evening, and that is Councillor Anne Hooks. Are there any others that I'm aware of?
No other apologies that we're aware of, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. I will now proceed to agenda item 2, declarations of interest. So do members have any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest that they wish to declare this evening? Please state the item and the nature of your interest. Okay, as there are no declarations, I will now proceed to agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. So please can I have a proposer to approve the minutes as an accurate record of the meeting from 17th of April 2024, Councillor Wright, and could I please have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Ramage. So the minutes have been moved and seconded as an accurate record. All those in favour, please indicate by a show of hands. Thank you. The minutes are approved. We will now, I will just take a moment just to sign the minutes from the previous meetings before we go on to agenda item 4. So agenda item 4 is public question time, and members, I can confirm that there are no registered speakers for this evening's meeting. So we will now proceed to agenda item 5, the local audit update. So members, the report for this item is set out on pages 6 to 10 of tonight's agenda, and I will now introduce Phil Myers, our Head of Finance, to set out the report.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So the purpose of this report is really just to bring the committee up to speed where we are with the position regarding local audits. So you'll recall that at the last meeting that was held back in April on the 17th, details were provided at that time of the then government's proposals on how they were looking to clear the backlog of audits, which we know is an outstanding issue and is affecting many authorities up and down the country. So there were proposals that they were consulting on, and those proposals included some proposed legislative changes. Now, due to the calling of the general election and the dissolution of Parliament, unfortunately that did mean that the enabling legislation was not able to progress. So essentially those proposals have been stalled. And if you recall, there was the proposals included what they called a backstop date, which was proposed at 30th of September 2024, where the expectation was that all the outstanding audits up to and including the 22-23 financial year would all be resolved. So that's not now going to happen. What we are awaiting on is what the new government's proposals will be. Now, we haven't had any detail, but we do know that recent statements by the government have said that reforming the local audit system is one of their sort of key priorities, particularly for local government. So I think at the moment, ourselves and the external auditors are in a bit of wait and see, really, and hopefully we'll get some further clarification as to how this situation is going to be moved forward. Also, at the last meeting, you had an update from BDO LLP, who were our previous auditors and are responsible for the audits that are effectively impacted by the delay. Now, they set out at the meeting their intentions, and that included concluding the audits for 1920 and 2021 by the 30th of September. They did indicate that they were likely to disclaim the audit opinions for 21-22 and 22-23 on the basis that they will not have done any work on those audits, and that they would also fulfil the requirements around value for money. Now, we just today we've actually had a meeting with BDO, and they are stating that it is still their intention to stick to the 30th September date for the 1920 and 2021 audits. I did say that the news might be met with a degree of scepticism by the committee, but nevertheless, I think we will try and remain positive. So, I mean, they've reached out to us this time, and it does look like they are allocating resource to deal with this situation. So, we're hoping that at the next meeting of this committee in October, so I think it's on the 9th of October, that we may get a report from BDO on those 2 years, which will effectively be completing those audits. So, whilst they have reported previously on those years, they have indicated that they will need to come back to this committee with an updated sort of audit completion report on both years. So we will remain positive on that whilst we can. I did attach to this report, if you recall, the committee had previously asked for a response from BDO around accounting for the lack of progress that we felt was being made, and we did eventually get a response from BDO, and I have attached that to this report for members for members to note. In terms of our current auditors, I think the position there is much more positive, and that I think they've been there's a recent meeting we've had with them. They've been indicating that progress from their perspective has been very good here, and in comparison to their other clients, I think they feel they're in a good position here to continue their work. So again, we're probably anticipating that they will be bringing a report to the next committee, probably on their value for money work, which I think they've indicated that they've found, very encouraging a position here. They've been very sort of impressed with some of the work that's been going on around on the value for money aspects. So I think their intention will be to bring an interim audit plan, which will be an update from their previous report, and some commentary around the value for money work. Probably then at the subsequent meeting, probably the one in January, where we would hope that they'll bring their audit completion report on the 23-24 financial year. And again, the report just in respect to the 23-24 year, just again, just to keep members up to speed. So local authorities were required to produce their accounts for that year by the 31st of May. And it's pleasing to report that this council achieved that date, which actually at the time it was being reported that only around 40% of local authorities had been able to do that. So I think that's a good achievement for Mark and the team there in producing the accounts on time. Have just noted there that normally when we produce the accounts, we would have a period of statutory public inspection. That would happen when the accounts are signed, and that certification is by myself as Section 151 officer. As with 22-23, they've been published uncertified at this stage because I think just recognising the fact that we have got 4 years of outstanding audits. And therefore the assurances that I would normally get as Section 151 officer, obviously there's a gap there, but obviously that's a position that I'm keeping under review, and as soon as we can, we will instigate that public inspection period. I think that's all really I wanted to just say about that report, but happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. Just before I open up to members, I think it's unfortunate that the general election was called, and as if BDO needed any excuse for any other delays. However, we are where we are, and actually it is quite reassuring to hear that they are going to try their very best to stick to the 30th of September. That is something that they had committed to us in person, and we'll just have to wait and see whether they are able to deliver on that this time. I think personally, I'll remain cautiously optimistic. I think it's too good to be true. So you've got to see it to believe it. However, it is reassuring and actually positive to hear from KPMG that actually it seems like a bit of a novelty, really, to hear that they may be coming to another committee meeting with some reports, because that's certainly something we haven't seen under the previous auditors. So, and I just feel that it needs to be noted and congratulated that where only 40% of councils were able to deliver their accounts on time, but this council was one of them. So yeah, thank you to you and your team that were able to deliver that on behalf of the council. Members, does anybody have any questions? Councillor Edwards?
Yeah, just to echo what you were saying, Chair, that this BEO did not need to be given any more excuses to not do their jobs, but I think that the council should be very many congratulations to the team. The council should be very proud that we managed to publish our accounts on time when only 40% of authorities did. We've got our next meeting, as you said, only a couple of weeks after the backstop date, so I guess the proof's in the pudding. We'll see at the next one. But yeah, just to again echo what you were saying, it's encouraging to see that the KPMG external auditor is so engaged already with this committee and this authority's work. And I look forward to that relationship continuing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Chairman. My first question really is merely to display my own ignorance. I just wondered, what is a disclaimed opinion and what status does it have? Does it have any status or any value to us at all?
So essentially, a disclaimed opinion will be more or less just stating the fact that because they've done no work, then they can't give any view or opinion on those accounts. That was clearly one of the issues that were part of the consultation, and I know local authorities were concerned about the messaging that disclaimed opinions would potentially have. So we are advised that auditors are going to be they've been given advice by the National Audit Office about if they are going to issue disclaimed opinions. They've still got to do some work in order to issue a disclaimed opinion, we're told, and they'll be doing that in the context of some national guides through the National Audit Office on the audit, who are responsible for the audit code. So, and I think it's been, highlighted that, authorities will be concerned with how disclaimed opinions are actually portrayed out to the public, and that there is a full understanding that it's not necessarily a recognition on the financial position or performance of the authority, but it's just the mere fact that the auditors have not got the or had the resources in order to be able to do or complete those audits.
My second question was, there was mention of excuse me, temporary changes proposed by CIPFA to the Code of Practice. Is there anything that we need to know on that, or anything that we would actually understand? What are those changes?
So you're right. So part of the proposals around trying to help with the, so you've got the backstop, so it was sort of dealing with the backstop, but also the sort of recovery and trying to sort of prevent future audits suffering with the same delay. So you're right, CIPFA, and I think you referenced in there that they were consulting on some, short-term changes to the accounting code, which is what guides us in the way we have to prepare our financial statements, and they were going to do that for the 23-24 year and the 24-25. So 23-24 is a little bit academic, really, because most authorities should have done their accounts anyway. CIPFA have now more recently indicated that they're effectively going to stop that work, and I think what they're saying is they're going to, because of the interruption to the process, because of the election and the enabling legislation getting through, I think they're saying, well, we need to see what the new government have to say, but I think they're now switching their focus on what they're calling longer term reform, which is around, there's issues around trying to make local authority accounts a bit more relevant and perhaps less complicated than perhaps they are, and maybe shift the focus to the things that are probably more important to taxpayers, rather than some of the more technical details which effectively have no impact on our sort of council tax or budgets, but are really sort of just accounting arrangements. So that's what CIPFA have said. They're effectively going to focus on that longer term reform piece now.
And the final one was basically, it looked to me to be a fairly weak statement of intent from BDO. Is there anything more than, even a straw in the wind to suggest that they are really going to deliver this time?
I think, as I said, it's not unsurprising that we may have hold some scepticism. We are led to believe that they are having to report to the Financial Reporting Council, who sort of regulate the auditors. They are having to effectively keep them updated so far as their intentions are. So, from what we're told is they are telling the regulators of the local audits, currently of the audits, that their intention is to complete those 2 years audits. So, and as I say, we've seen a bit of a shift. They've, some resources have been identified. They've been discussing with Mark and myself this morning around sort of timetabling and availability of staff to sort of deal with issues. I mean, they have said that so far as at this point in time, they don't think they need anything from us for the 1920 to complete that, but there may be some information that they still need to obtain from us for the 2021, because that was not as progressed as the 1920 year. So I think, as we say, we've just got to take it that that's their intention. I mean, they are going to have to resolve it. I think they'll be forced to resolve it. because I suspect the government will come out with something probably not dissimilar, I would suspect, to what the previous government was, you know, and having this backstop date, it may be that that backstop date, certainly probably won't be end of September now, but you know, it could be end of this calendar year or the end of the financial year. We'll just have to wait and see, really.
Thank you, Councillor Bohr. And next I have Councillor Walsh.
Thank you very much. I mean, a number of us have raised these issues before, and thank you for the update through the chair. And if I may say so, I think I might not be alone. One of the things I like about this committee is there's rather less political positioning, and you know, including perhaps myself in that. But I genuinely mean that. So I have a couple of three questions, I think, on this, just in terms of information and where we stand. What is your level of confidence, Phil, that we will get these two outstanding reports for 1920 and 2021? Initially, from what you said, I thought we were hoping them by the end of September, but your latest remarks, I think you said it might be later. I mean, what's your level of confidence that we're going to get those 2 years by whatever date you think is most likely?
Well, as I said, you know, I think, you know, from the conversation we had today, I think we just have to take it that BDO are intending to complete the 1920 and the 2021 by that, you know, that September day. As I said, you know, they've promised us things before, so you know, and that's what I said to BDO this morning. You'll forgive us if we're slightly sceptical, but.
So you're like 50% or 80%? I'm
I
asking
don't know.
I
I think I'd like to be a bit more optimistic because, as I said, I think they do need to get these done. They have said, you know, one of the issues, if you recall, previously where they said, you know, they couldn't do work was because of the national health audits, and that they have to take priority. So they did confirm that actually the audits for the national health they've done, the last ones, they've all been done and dusted, whereas previously there was some sort of hangover that did actually interrupt their ability to put resources back onto local government. So they've told us that, you know, there's no hangover from the NHS audits that should be precluding them. They're sort of engaging resources and allocating resources. So I'd like to remain optimistic that we will get those 2 years. Certainly, if I was slightly, perhaps 2019-20, I would be more confident about, because I don't think there's as I said, there's very little, if anything, they really need to do. It's just really them just doing their own internal housekeeping. 2021, maybe, because they are going to. They have said that they will probably need some information from us, and that will be still subject to sort of partner review internally. So it could be that if anything, that one might have less optimism that might hit, because that might get delayed because of that.
No, thank you. And Councillor Bohr raised the issue, because he beat me to it, about the 2 years for disclaim. But given that, what do we want and what do we do in terms of assurance to the public? What would Braintree require to fill the gap of, if I'm right in understanding, that there won't be external reports on those years? What's our fallback?
Our fallback is, well, I mean, we've prepared the accounts. We've got accounts there that we can offer out. Obviously, as Section 151 officer, you know, I have a sort of obviously a personal responsibility in ensuring that you know, I'm satisfied with those. There will be, if with those accounts being disclaimed, that will mean that subsequent audits, and starting with the 23-24, which KPMG will be picking up, that will mean that they won't have the same level of assurance over the opening balances that they would normally expect to have. And so I think we will have to expect that for probably several years, maybe up to 3 years, we may end up having accounts that are audited and signed off, but there may be some caveats on those, because I think what KPMG have indicated, and I think they may have explained to this committee previously, that they will effectively have to build up a level of assurance and, you know, about not only the closing balances but the opening, and I think what they've said to us, that will probably take 2 or 3 years before they'll be able to be confident and say, well, we're confident completely with the accounts.
Thank you. And in my questions, and I can't speak for anybody else, I'm not assuming there's anything, you know, untoward. And you've given some confidence boost in what you said about the availability of accounts, but it is normal procedure to have all of these. The last point, if I may, you said that this has a knock-on effect in terms of public inspection. So what can we expect in terms of public inspection for the first 2 years and the second 2 years, albeit it may not be ideal?
So in terms of public inspection, so we the 1920 accounts have had a public inspection period undertaken on them, as has the 2021 and the 21-22 accounts. So the only accounts at the moment that haven't had that public inspection period is the 22-23 and the 23-24, and that's really on the basis that the inspection should really start when the accounts have been published and certified by the Section 151 officer, which is myself. And at the moment, my view on that is, if we get the 1920 and 2021 accounts signed off, and the expectation is that they are unqualified, i.e. that, you know, there's completely fine, that will then give a bit more added assurance that on those later years, that would probably allow us then to maybe sign those accounts and then move on with the public inspection period. And we may have to do that anyway as part of the backstop, because I think that was one of the requirements the government proposed at the time, that any public inspection periods that were outstanding would also have to be completed. So,
Well, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor Welsh. Councillor Van Dolken.
Well, I was just going to lower the tone a bit, as I may occasionally do, and say that I find it quite ironic that BDO are looking for value for money. I think if anybody should be, it should be us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Van Dolken. Councillor Jeffries.
It was just an observation, really, in their letter. At the previous meeting, we did tease an apology out of BDO, just about. I noticed that there's no apology in the letter for the delays. The only apology was just the delay in the letter, not actually in the delay of the audits. But it's probably a bit too much to hope for.
No, I agree, and I think when we look at the letter was initially, I think we'd asked the letter on the 16th of Feb, and then by the next committee on the 17th of April we still hadn't had a reply. I think after everybody had their 2 pennies worth, they quickly managed to get a reply within 2 weeks. So I think they certainly got the feel of the room. Unfortunately, an apology formally in writing wasn't to come. But no, thank you, members, for your input in this. I thought it would be a popular item, as it always is. But if there are no further questions, we'll move on. We're asked to note this report. So members, can we please take that the report has been noted, and please show by raise of hands. Thank you, members. So we will now proceed to agenda item 6, the key financial indicators. So this report is set out on pages 11 to 19 of tonight's agenda, and I will re-invite Phil Myers to set out this report.
So so this is one of the regular reports that come to this committee. So it's covering 2 aspects, really. So we've got you've got an extract from the budget outturn for 23-24, and that was reported to the cabinet just at the start of July. So that it's just sort of picking up the report there. So what you've got in this report, you've got an extract from the more detailed report that went as part of the annual performance report. What you've also got then is the key financial indicators, and I suppose because of the timing, it was probably sensible to report the 31st of March key financial indicators. So you've got that alongside the sort of budget outturn position, but also, you know, we're sort of late into July now, so we did have the first quarter's key financial indicators up to the end of June. You haven't got the financial report for the first quarter, because that is actually just being currently finalised by the sort of Mark's team at the moment, before that sort of flows through the chain, through sort of management, through the management board and through cabinet, and then we'll obviously come to this committee probably at its next meeting. So in terms of the outturn, you can see, you know, just in summary terms, we had a positive position at the end of the year. So after the carry forwards were taken into account, it's a positive variance of £1.1 million, and the report just sort of sets out, you know, in very high level terms where that variance was, and you can see that, you know, staffing expenditure, we were under budget by £610,000. Now some of that is really because we received, we were able to defray some of the staffing costs through new burdens funding and other external contributions. So where we were able to justify that staff were working on various things that were attracting external funding but were otherwise budgeted for, we were able to sort of use that funding instead. So that created a sort of one-off variance in the year. But as ever, we also were carrying a range of vacancies across the year which contribute to that underspend. Conversely, on other expenditure, so this is other expenditure, sort of non-staffing, we actually exceeded budget by £660,000, and the report sort of sets out the sort of some of the key areas. Their housing benefits, we know there are sort of the demands around housing benefit, housing, and the impact of the housing market and the likes. We've previously reported, I've previously reported to this committee around the fact that we are temporarily had to bear costs around some of our new property assets because of voids where we're looking to let units. So where we would normally recoup costs through service charges, you know, once those units are let, then we'll be able to recharge those costs, and also because of sales of plots that we've got up at the Horizon Business Park, again, you know, subject to service charges, but at the moment we've still got several plots that we have still got to sort of effectively sell and effectively and then sort of transfer that service charge responsibility. We did also have increased costs on our operational vehicles. We have, for various reasons, had an ageing fleet, which we've been sort of more recently going through quite a substantial replacement programme. So I think we will hope to expect that as those new vehicles come online, that some of the operating costs around maintenance, and obviously if a vehicle's off the road, it means we have to hire in an extra vehicle to cover. So we would hope that that will be mitigated going forward. We did have some areas where we had some positives, and perhaps the main one was around external interest payments. So we were able to defer planned sort of borrowing there, and that meant we made savings on external interest costs. And there's just then a note around the Wethersfield legal challenge costs that we incurred in the year as well, which again we know were sort of exceptional reasons and are one-off in nature. So the main reason for the positive position then was really around income. So we're £1.7 million of overachieved income, and that was primarily from two areas: treasury management and the gain share from council tax sharing arrangements that we have with the preceptors. And again, we've reported previously on that the windfalls that we're gaining because of the rapid rise that we saw in interest rates, and that combined with the fact that we've been holding cash balances perhaps higher than we would perhaps have anticipated. We did have a shortfall in planning application income, but that was not as great as we had been projecting earlier in the year, due to the fact that the government did allow for an uplift in statutory fees, which hadn't happened for several years. So there was quite a significant uplift in the fees we were charging, and that did help in the final quarter of the year to sort of to mitigate that position. So I think those are sort of the high level really, and there is a more detailed commentary in the report that accompanied the fourth quarter and annual performance that was considered at the cabinet meeting. I think it's just worth clock that as we were sort of projecting the in-year position during the year, we did take into account some of that variance in the 24-25 budget. Members may recall, in the budget process we made quite a significant increase in our assumptions around things like treasury management income and the council tax sharing. There were certain areas where we were incurring additional costs that were coming through in the overspends, where we've actually put some extra money into the budget to cover that. So we're in many respects we will have already anticipated a fair portion of that outturn position, and so we'll be then measuring the position for the first quarter of 24-25 very shortly. In terms of the key financial indicators, as I said, so you've got the position there in the Appendix B, which sort of sets out the position at March and then for the first quarter. So you can see, like with capital spend, we had a programme of 14.6 million, of which 7.8 million we're expecting to spend in 23-24. We spent actually 5.1 million. And 2.7 million of that of the difference is being carried over into 24-25 as projects are still sort of in progress, or they for whatever reason were delayed in terms of commencement and therefore likely to be delivered in the current year. The report sets out where the main spend was on capital, so I won't cover that. Capital receipts were lower than we anticipated. So this is capital monies that we're generating. Two areas really: right to buy sales, which we received through an arrangement with Eastlight. We did see quite a significant fall in the number of right to buy receipts completed in the year, and I think that's not probably a surprise. We were reporting that during the year, and as a likely impact of the slowdown in the housing market due to the higher mortgage interest rates that were being faced. We were expecting receipts from some plots of land that the council is currently selling for residential development, but all those were subject to sort of satisfactory planning. So some of those were sort of delayed. So whilst we didn't receive as much in the 23-24 year, we anticipate those receipts coming through in 24-25 now. So that's just a delay on receipts that we were expecting. In terms of, I think, lettable units, I think occupancy rates seem quite resilient. We've had quite a bit of an improvement in the occupancy, so 93% at the end of June, which was slightly better than the position at March. Council tax and business rate collection. In both cases, we were slightly down against a performance at the end of the year compared with the previous year. That said, you can see that we were actually above, the Essex and Shire district averages. So, and I think the performance in the current year on council tax, we're seeing there, even if you take into account the fact that last year collection was probably boosted in the early part of the year through the fact that we did do the new homes and growth dividend, which was credited to accounts at the start of the year as part of their bill. So that did effectively inflate the collection rate at the start of the year, and that obviously evened itself out over the remainder. But nevertheless, I think we are seeing perhaps underlying performance is probably a little bit down. That said, we're not unique in that respect. We're seeing that across Essex. Most authorities are actually seeing lower collection at the end of June than they were at the end of June last year. So we do keep that position under review. We do make an allowance in the budget for non-collection, and in light of the performance, we will keep that assumption under consideration. So business rates similarly slightly down for last year, but actually in the current year we're actually doing slightly better at the end of June than we did the previous year. Nothing really to report really in terms of write-offs. You say you've got the numbers in terms of write-offs. As we've said before, many of the write-offs are driven by the individual voluntary arrangements that we've seen a big uptake on, and we know that some of these money programs are sort of making a lot of noise around how people can deal with their debts, and we know that other sectors are having impacts from debt. Energy companies have been recently reported around the debts that they've been holding. So whilst we do write off where we have to, but in the context of the amounts we're actually collecting, the actual amount of write-off is still a very small percentage of the income we do collect. In terms of other debts, again, I'd say, there's nothing more to add really to the report there. The position is as is. We know that there's a fair chunk of the other debt is you've got service and debt, and then you've got housing benefit related debt, and certainly with the housing benefit we are restricted again in terms of how much we can collect on that through regulations, but nevertheless we are, we've got many cases where we have sort of instalment arrangements in place. And I think then Treasury management, I think, I won't say too much around Treasury management because I know you've got a report later on the agenda for the outturn on Treasury management. But again, just to say, in the current year, we are still tracking a fair return at the moment of just over 5% on our short-term investments. So his interest rates have been sort of quite resilient, and they haven't been sort of reduced at the moment. That we are seeing the benefit of that in our income at the moment. I think that's it really. Chair.
Thank you, Phil. Members, Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a few questions. I was looking at the 3.4.5, the plots of land. I was just wondering if we are relying on these capital receipts, because the forecasts that I've seen from statistical research suggests that 24 to 25 is a time when land values, building land values, is projected to drop by 4.5%. So I just wondered, you know, if we don't actually need that money, it would be better to defer it. The other thing is prospect for businesses. The rate of write-offs, business rates, if you look at the first quarter and project that to a whole year, that does represent an increase over the sort of previous year. And I was just wondering, is there any information to show what kind of premises these businesses are in? Are any of them, or a substantial amount of them, in premises that we actually let out? Is it a case of us charging too much in rent and not getting the business rates in? So, yeah, that's my contribution.
Okay. So, with regard to plot sales, so we've previously went through a process of advertising those, and we had offers on sites that were sort of accepted by the council. So those offers were previously made to the council, and you know, the best offers that were made on those sites were accepted, but in all cases the offers came in subject to planning. So we're not necessarily in control of when the developer or the proposed developer was going to put the planning in, and we know that some of these plots are quite small, so it may be very small developers who are involved, not large scale ones. So so I suppose the value of the sales had already been agreed. They've already been agreed, and essentially what we're just waiting for is the planning decisions to be taken on those sites. Now we know we've had one site where the offer was based on an assumption around the area being developed, and the planning consent wasn't in line with that, so we've had to sort of revisit the value that we were able to get on that plot. But so I think we're already, with those plots of land, we're already in a process where we're sort of almost committed to sell those, and it's really to the developers at the moment to come back and say, well, they've got the planning and they want to complete the sale. So in terms of business rates, so that was around write-offs, was that? Yes, sorry if I recall the question on.
Yes, it was that if you look at the rates of write-offs for the first quarter of this year and project that up, it would represent an increase over the previous year. And I just wondered, are any of those write-offs for premises that we actually let out? Are we kind of forcing people into a situation where they can't afford the business rates?
I'm not aware that write-offs are necessarily in property that we are letting. So that's not, it's not necessarily information that as a matter of course we sort of keep in. So business rates will, whatever property it's related to, will be seeking to collect that, and if there are reasons why it needs to be written off, they would need to do that. As I said, we don't write off stuff quickly and easily, but I do know there's been several businesses that have gone into liquidation and the likes, and that's the reasons why we've had to write off. So it's not, you're right, if you took a straight line trajectory, it could suggest a higher level, but I suppose the write-offs are a bit sort of up and down. We'll have, you know, more one month and sort of less than another month. So, but we are keeping an eye on it. But so far as whether the write-offs are related to property we're letting, I'm not aware that that is a problem. You know, our asset management, you know, it's not something that's come through those channels.
Is there a particular time of year when write-offs tend to rise? Or?
No, I don't think so. I think sometimes it comes down to the resources within the team to sort of deal with stuff. You know, as they, you know, if they're dealing with other stuff, then there may be cases that we're being advised on in terms of, you know, business gone into liquidation. It may be, you know, it just takes a bit of time for us to actually process those through. So, no, I don't think there's any, you know, seasonal where you say, oh, there's more in that period. Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. Next I have Councillor Walsh.
Thank you very much. Just briefly, if I may, I may need some help, possibly from the chair or other members. On the first point, I put in, just for information, a written question. Was there any indication, because you talked about capital expenditure, I think 14.6 million over the programme period, is that right? Something like that. I put in a written question, can we get some indication of how that breaks down by ward? And I was told, not unreasonably, that it's not planned on a ward basis. So I was in touch with Dan Gascoigne, and he may have followed up with yourself, Phil, or perhaps others can help me. I then said, is there a light touch way we can, this is not to go off on one, I just want to try and understand how our publicly funded expenditure is programmed across the district. So I asked if there's some way we could get an indication of this, say on a light touch basis, say rural areas on one group, small towns, villages, hamlets, second group, or large towns such as Braintree and Witham. Now, those, I'm a geographer, those are probably the wrong categories, but I don't know if he raised it with you or if anybody can help here, because I thought we should have some indication of how we're spending publicly funded capital expenditure across the district. I was told it's not planned, therefore nothing to say, but I didn't find that a very convincing answer.
I'm not aware of any detail from that, but Phil, have you got anything you'd like to come back to Councillor Walsh with there?
So it's certainly the case that, I mean, we don't budget and we don't plan our capital investment at the level and in the way you're describing. So I think in order to provide that sort of information would require some further analysis and work done on where we're spent. I think the thing for me around that is you know, inevitably our capital investment is going to be we invest where we've got assets, and we know where, you know, a lot of our asset, the council's assets are located, and a chunk of our sort of capital investment will also is not really area based. So, you know, if we're investing in things like vehicles and equipment, you know, that's to provide services across the whole district. So there's only probably certain, you know, a relatively small proportion, I suppose, of our budget, if you know, took out where, you know, obviously, you know, we're spending on leisure facilities, and we know where the leisure facilities are. We know there are some strategic investments that we've made, and you know, we couldn't say, well, you know, we've spent X amount in Great Notley, but I'm not sure what that then actually tells people, because I think, you know, I think you could argue that the investment made in the Great Notley on Horizon is actually a district-wide benefit. So I'm not really sure what that analysis would necessarily give you about our capital spend in that respect. So I think it's work we would have to do if we provide that level of information. I'm not really sure what that would necessarily give you. I mean, we can give you a detailed breakdown of the projects, and some of those projects will, you know, obviously fall. You'd be able to say, well, that's in that area and that's in that area, just purely where the nature of the expenditure has been incurred. But you know, we don't, as a rule, just programme and account for our capital investment in the way you're perhaps describing. So.
That's very helpful, and I'm trying not to be simplistic here. I did work in project planning and town planning, so I'm just trying to get a bit of a feel, and I don't know if it's a novel approach, because I sometimes wonder in other parts of district councils, I'm trying to look for evidence to inform policy and not vice versa. So I would be very grateful if we could just get a list, you know, of you mentioned not area-wide investments, but more locally based ones. If I could get some list, if that's not a vast amount of efforts, that would be interesting, and I would just like to have a look at it. And the other thing I did want to ask, if I may, and this is perhaps verging into financial philosophy, which is a bit bizarre, but I think members may get my point. Is there not some level of inequity in the fact that, you know, many councils are dependent for that part of business-generated rate income on physically based businesses? Now, in the 24th century, a lot is online, and perhaps there's no way that we can judge or apportion the extent of online businesses active here or based here. Maybe the new government, maybe colleagues in the Labour Party here may be able to tell me if there's anything in the Labour manifesto. It's not at the moment right by my bedside. But it's a genuine challenge, is it not? As the economy shifts to online, as people go from petrol, diesel to electric cars, there's going to be an issue for local government. So I'm just, ruminating on this. Maybe somebody has something to say.
Would you like to come back on that, Phil?
I know that's an issue. And I know that's what businesses have been raising, that discrepancy between, you say, online business and physical. I understand, but I'm not probably best placed to comment. But there are I understand. The new government have made comments around reforming business rates, and I get the impression that maybe in that context that the world of business has changed in that respect. I suppose from a local authority point of view, business rates is a significant chunk of funding, so whatever they do in terms of reforming business rates, I think local authorities will be very keen to understand how that will impact in terms of the level of money that individual authorities ultimately will get through that route. So I think it's a case of watch this space with the new government, I think, in that respect.
And I suppose with regards to the list of assets, you could, I suppose, another avenue would be go to the relevant cabinet member who looks after that part of their portfolio. They may be able to, in terms of a written question, may be able to supply you with a list of those assets as well. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Van Dolkum.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think I've asked this before, but if I could ask Phil or Mark to just look at page 16, where there are two spreadsheets. And this is kind of the nub of our, if you like, our business. And could you, in just a few sentences, tell me the relationship between the net totals? So the first one, the updated budget, 17,643, and the other three updated budgets. What is the relationship between those four groups of columns, if you follow me?
So you're given the net budget in the first table. The table below is then essentially splitting that net budget down. So you've got salary related or staffing related budget of just over £24 million. You've got then other expenditure budgets that total just over 42 million, and then you've got income budgets totaling just over 49 million, 49,076. If you take the aggregate of those, that will get back to your 17.6 million.
So 24 plus 42.
Yeah, less your 49. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So I think we provided this information because I think from previously I think you, Councillor Van Duggan, I think you'd made comments about we provide the information or we show the budget as a net position, but actually that does hide the fact that you've got there's a that.
Okay,
that
so
hides a
other
picture.
expenditure is in fact our total expenditure.
So if you took
if you
took
a
other
business.
expenditure and the salaries, the 65, which would be 67 million pound, that's our sort of gross expenditure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Obviously, a big chunk of that you can see is actually in finance under other
Yeah.
expenditure, 26, and I think in the comments we make a point that does include housing benefit payments,
Yeah.
which is a big chunk of that money, and 98% of it or 98% of it we do actually get back through subsidy, which is then reflected in the corresponding income budget. So if you look at the finance line, you can see finance has got a very high gross other expenditure budget, but also a very high gross income budget, and within that is that housing benefit relationship. But so yeah, and I think that table was provided specifically because I think that was a request from yourself, about understanding those gross positions as opposed just to talking in net terms.
No.
I think I've got it. I'll go and play with it a bit more, but thank you for going through that anyway.
No, thank you for clarifying that, Phil. Next I have Councillor Jeffreys.
Thank you. It was to reply to Councillor Walsh, really, and I don't know if that's appropriate, but since he mentioned the Labour Party and he also mentioned earlier about not being political, I don't and haven't, I have to admit that I have not read every word that's in the manifesto of the Labour Party that they got elected on. You won't be surprised to know, I was a bit busy at the time. I suspect that businesses, whether the employee works from home, online, or actually physically in a building, they still will be recorded as an employee for tax purposes. So those businesses, it is a different way of working, definitely, but the actual tax process is still the same. So companies would have a record of their employees. So it wouldn't make much difference whether they were working from home or in a business, I would have thought. Do you see what I mean? I'd like also to talk to you about capital expenditure, but I don't think we've got time tonight, but maybe some other time.
Yes, fine, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ramage.
Yeah, Phil, I'm looking particularly at item 343 on page 18 regarding capital investment. Couple of questions I want to ask there, and it relates to play areas, parks, open spaces, 837,000. Could you tell me part of that, is that to do with the refurbishment of the skate parks? Because presumably that comes under the heading of parks and what have you.
Yeah, there might be an element in there, but I don't think
I just wondered what, because I think,
that's a separate, I think that's probably more likely in this financial year.
yeah, because Weavers Park is having theirs refurbished as well.
Yeah,
But whoever decided to do it this time of year is crazy. We've got summer holidays coming up when they're used most of all. I mean, I find that absolutely, and the particular skate park I'm talking about in Whittam is in my ward, so Spa Road. So, but we are where we are with that. But it could have been thought out a bit more timetable-wise. And other costs there, ICT. Is this 563,000? Is that related to upgrading the software or new hardware, or what? What does that include?
So I think a big chunk of that is actually investment into our servers, the server infrastructure. So we run. I'm a technical person, but we have virtual servers that and I think they've just made some big investment into the structure and actually the server environment and the like. So it's all safe and secure. So part of that ICT infrastructure is sort of hardware, is what I'd call the hardware and the sort of surrounding environment. But part of it, as just reference their system. So some of that investment will be actually in some of the corporate systems that are used by.
Is that spread out over a number of years, that amount of money, or is it all on 1 year?
Well, that's the amount that we spent through the capital programme in the 23-24 financial year. So I mean, that's the server infrastructure project. I recall that was somewhere in the excess of 300,000. So which is a big chunk of that money, but that would be one-off. That'll be done and probably won't need to be done for quite a few years now.
Yeah.
So So.
And the Horizon Business Park, 292,000. What does that actually relate to? Because obviously there's a lot of money being spent on that project already. So
yeah. So again, I think I haven't got the exact detail of what that 292. I'll probably give you that as a separate note outside. But you're right. I mean, we've substantially invested in that area. But I think like with any major projects, there's probably some sort of final completions and snagging points and the like that needed to be resolved and that. But I can provide some further detail to you.
And are we starting to get a return on the business park side of things?
So with the business park and with the business park, so the sort of, I suppose the model there was we put the infrastructure in and then we sold off the plots of land. So we're effectively receiving back capital receipts. Now the first call on that money is to effectively pay for the project itself. Yeah. So that's the aim on there, is to recover, the investment we've made in there. The aim is to recover as much of that capital that we invested through the sale of those plots of land.
Yeah, plus we're getting business rates as well from that.
Plus the development, it's increased our business rate, tax base, so we're sort of gaining through that, and also there's the other benefits and that through the job skill market that's bringing it in. In terms of the plants, so that again, the business case there was, in the early years, it wouldn't wash its face, but the expectation is from 24-25, it does turn, it does turn a small surplus, and that's from the income it's generating through the letted units and the co-working space and the like, and conferencing facilities there. So so this year is the first year we would be expecting that to start to produce a surplus, and that's one of the key things.
And I guess we're already doing that in the town centre here with the hotel, etc. Yeah.
So again, the same model there. Part of it was around recouping capital investment through the transfer of the residential to Eastlight, and so that sort of brought back in capital income. But then with the hotel and the health hub and etc. We've got leases in there that are generating lease income to us. That is then again contributing to the cost of that facility.
Yeah, because our portfolio is sort of investment in property as such. Like we've got several, haven't we, up in Colchester there?
I don't know exactly where. We've got a property in Colchester, Connaught House, which is occupied. I'm personally, I don't exactly know where it is in Colchester, but we do have one
But
property.
we do get an
we
income
have one
from it.
property out of what we call out of district, which we get income from.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you all. If there are no further questions, we're asked to note the report of the key financial indicators as of the 31st of March 2024 and first quarter for 2024-25 to the 30th of June 2024, as well as note the budget outturn for the 2023-24 financial reporting period. Please can I take it that this report has been noted? And please show by a raise of hands. Thank you, members. The report has been noted, and I will now proceed to agenda item 7, the internal audit annual report for 2023-24. This item is set out on pages 20 to 37 of tonight's agenda, and please can I invite Angie Mitchell, our Audit, Insurance and Fraud Manager, to set out the report.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So this is the annual opinion for the 23-24 year, opinion on the effectiveness and design of the systems of internal control, risk management and governance. This opinion is provided in accordance with the public sector internal audit standards. So if we go straight to the opinion then, we get some background on the standards and legal requirements. There's reference in the background to the Code of Ethics, and there are more details on that in the Charter, which is a later report to this committee. The annual report details the role of internal audit, including the functional reporting arrangements. And I'm required to confirm to you that I have no constraints placed on me. So paragraph 3.3 details the background of this and the no constraints, no impairments to the audit team's independent and objectivity, and the scope of that statement. 3.4 details the basis of the opinion, and paragraph 4 is the other assurance providers that we consider in the course of developing the opinion.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Angie.
Is it not picking me up?
Pull your microphone a bit closer, please. I can't hear you quite as well as I
Thank
want to.
you.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt, Chairman.
Is that better? Is this picking me up?
A little better.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so...
That's better, thank you.
Super. So section 5 is the overall opinion, which is that the systems are generally adequate with improvement required in some areas. So again, there's a bit more detail in section 5 on that. So we notice that there have been some previous weaknesses identified, and significant progress has been made by offices in resolving those weaknesses. There are some areas which remain to be fully addressed, but there is still progress within those areas. We'll come on to that in a moment. Work was conducted across 5 corporate priorities, so this is the former priorities relevant for the duration of this opinion, and across 10 strategic risks. With a positive response by management, the weaknesses were generally operational in nature and would not impact on the achievement of corporate priorities or significantly affect strategic risks. So most audits resulted in a full or substantial assurance opinion. 2 reviews were assessed as limited assurance at the time of the field work. Again, progress is being made on all of those. Further details in the report. There are ongoing actions from prior year audits. I've mentioned some outstanding recommendations, but also we consider the conclusion of the external auditor has already been addressed in this meeting. So again, following that, there are more details around the opinion and the scope of the opinion and the work that feeds into it, including delivery of the internal audit plan at section 6. So that gives a breakdown of the audits and the assurance levels and the number of recommendations made in those audits. So I mentioned a couple of limited assurance reports earlier. On paragraph 6.4, it gives a little bit more detail about those. And I understand with regards to the North Essex Parking Partnership, there is a scrutiny review planned on that. Paragraph 6.7 details the follow-up of previous limited assurance reports, and again there have been improvements made in all of the areas identified in here. And over the page, in particular relating to Horizon 120, I've been seeing a lot of information coming through from officers, such that we anticipate that the actions taken will have resolved the matters which made this a limited assurance report in the first place, and we're commissioning a formal follow-up just to confirm that, so we'll be able to report back to you at a future meeting on that. Paragraph 7.2, the standards require that the internal audit activity collectively possesses the knowledge, skills and other competencies needed to perform its responsibilities. So there's a bit more information on that for you. And then I referenced the coverage of work across corporate priorities and strategic risks. So page 32 gives more information on that. And paragraph 8 is a statement on internal audit independence to again provide more background on my earlier comments on that. Page 35 at section 9 is an update on the Quality Assurance and Improvement Programme, and there were some improvements made during 23-24 which built on the previous improvements, and these were in relation to the outcome of the external quality assessment and the action plan associated with that, and obviously compliance with standards. So those are identified in paragraph 9.1. And those are probably the key points, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
No, thank you ever so much, Angie. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Angie, for that, for running us through the report. Just on page 33, I just wanted to ask your view as to the discrepancy between some years in the high priority recommendation status we get, you know, 1 or 2 recommendations, but just 1920, I don't know if you might be able to recall quite why that year had so many hits on it for high priority recommendations.
Thank you. So I believe that related to a particularly detailed review of a high priority project, and it resulted in a number of recommendations in that one report itself. That you'll see that 17 of those high priority recommendations are complete, and we had a report back to this committee as a result of a follow-up of the implementation of recommendations in that report a while back, which confirmed completion.
And just one follow-up. I wondered why there were still 4 in-progress recommendations from, you know, the 1920 is now 5 years ago. 5 years ago. I wondered why they would still be in progress, and whether you know how far along they are.
So the 4 high priority from 1920, they related to contract management. I'm aware that there's been a lot of work corporately relating to contract management, procurement, project management, and so this is just part of matters that are feeding into a wider corporate project. So whilst these elements are outstanding at this point or in progress, they're just part of a bigger picture, and I know that a lot of improvements have been made corporately. We've got a project management office, and there's various template documentation being developed and so on. So there's a lot of movement. So these comments just relate to the items raised in that report, but as I say, it's part of a bigger picture.
Councillor Van Dolken.
Thank you. And thank you, Angie. I've been hearing your reports for a few years now, and never ceases to amaze me the amount of work you and your team get through. Congratulations. And I'll ask again, if I may, are you satisfied that you have enough resource? I'm sure you would say something to your seniors, but you know, I'm asking here in the public forum. That's one question.
Thank you. So if I wasn't able to see enough work completed to give me an opinion at the end of the year, then I would be reporting that to you. So across all the different sources of assurance that we take, so we're not just looking at the work that the internal auditors do, we're also considering where we can get external resources in to do work. We're also looking at other sources of assurance. So there's again a bigger picture there that we take our assurance from a number of places, and the opportunity to balance the internal resource with some targeted external support is valuable.
If I may, you mentioned NEP as one of the, let's say, more challenging reports. As some may know, I have in the past represented the council on NEP, so I know something about it. Are you getting the cooperation from the organisation that you need?
So we haven't followed up on the outcome of this report as yet. So this is some formal work that we'll be doing, but I'm sure our colleagues are working with them.
Thing, it's just a bit of off the cuff. How many Barclay cards do we, roughly, how many Barclay cards are there? I see that's part of your responsibility, though you're not allowed one. It states. I mean, are we talking hundreds here?
No, there aren't hundreds. So just to clarify, I'm just one of 3 administrators, so I don't hold a Council Barclay card myself, and nor do I want one. But no, there are, I don't have the exact number with me now, but we can certainly get that to you afterwards if that would be helpful. But no, we're not talking hundreds. I think it's less than 20. Yeah.
Councillor Ramage.
Yes, following up on the question about NEPs. It says in this particular item on here, item 6.4 on page 29, isn't it, that they haven't provided a full audit account. Is it a similar problem that we've got, that they haven't done this, or have they given any reasons why? And when do they anticipate providing it for you? And also, just a supplementary question, how much do we pay as a council to be part of that partnership?
Thank you, Councillor Ramage. I think I'm probably going to need to come back to you on the detail behind this. So I haven't got the specifics of payments.
Is it normal for this to happen? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's
So it's not normal to be in the situation that we are, and it's not just this council. There are a number of councils within the partnership.
Well, that's kind of where I was thinking on that basis. I mean, Epping and other councils in North Essex obviously involved with this as well. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we'll feed back afterwards.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I think, as already was mentioned, there's going to be a scrutiny review into that whole process as well. So I'm sure all members will be able to see the outcome of that once it's been carried out. I believe Councillor Van Dorken would like to come back.
Well, if it helps, I'd just clarify, very broad brush, we don't pay anything to the to NEP for the, how can I put it, the wardens, the parking, on the on-street. Their income comes from the fines. Okay? So that's, we have a separate, not all of the councils in NEP do this, but we also have a separate contract with them, with an amount of money paid for them to administer the oversee of our parking garages and the various parking areas. Okay, so they're two separate issues. One of them is the on-street, the people walking up down here fining, and that's where they get most of their income. We have a separate arrangement with them for the off-street parking, for which we pay an amount. I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you, members. If there are no more questions, we're asked to note the progress and performance against the 2024-25 internal audit plan. Please can I take it that this report has been noted? Thank you, members. The report has been noted. We will now proceed to agenda item 9, internal audit charter for July 2024. This is set out on pages agenda item 8, sorry. So this is set out on page 38 to 49 of the agenda. Okay, yes. So this is the internal audit plan, including progress against the internal audit for 2024-25. This is set out on pages 38 to 49. And again, Angie, coming back to you to set out this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So straight to paragraph 3.1.2, that summarises the audits which have been completed since the last report to this committee in April. So 4 reports there, all of which were either full or significant assurance. So that's a pretty good outcome. Paragraph 3.2 gives an update on the Quality Assurance and Improvement Programme and External Quality Assessment Action Plan update. So there's one item there, one additional improvement made, which is that auditors have commenced completion of work programmes in advance of field work. Paragraph 3.3 confirms that there have been no RIPA or IPA applications in 24-25 to the data producing this report and indeed to tonight. Appendix 1 gives a summary of the overall progress in relation to the a plan agreed at this committee in April this year. And there are a number of items in progress at the moment. And Appendix 2 is the outcome of those 4 audits that I mentioned earlier. Chair, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Monday, for getting me back on track. There's a lot of audit reports tonight. So do any members wish to speak on this item? Councillor Edwards.
Just a very brief question. Are you broadly satisfied with the process? What am I saying? The progress that your team has made in the programme of work that you've set out for this year?
So it is early days. When we started the year, we had a number of audits that were in progress from the previous year. So that you don't always start everything new on the first day and finish everything by the last day. There's always a bit of overlap between the two. So we expect that. And in the same way that we'll expect that there'll be some in progress at the end of this financial year that will carry on into the next one. So, say it's early days.
Councillor Van Dolken.
Thank you. Angie, on page 39 it mentions that, as we're aware, part of your work, or a big part of your work, is to do with insurance, and you say the insurance renewals are coming up, and obviously we've got a lot of property, a lot of vehicles. Do you, or can you just say whether there's been a large increase in the premiums that we are being charged?
So the next insurance year is from the 1st of October. So we're currently in the renewal process to gather information for that renewal. We've had indications from the liability insurance that the rates will remain as last year, but they will be, the amounts we pay will increase according to the rating factors, which are around overall budget and number of staff and wage roll and things like that. So we'll expect a proportionate increase in line with that. The motor, the indications at the moment are a 7.5% increase. The motor policy includes a provision for increase or decrease according to the loss ratio. So the increase is in line with that. The property is based on the change in the build sums, which we get annually reviewed by our partner NPS. So the rates don't change on property, but again the premiums will increase according to the change in the build sums. Those are the main ones. So this coming year, insurance year, October 24 to September 25, is the last year in the current long-term agreement, and then we'll be going to tender next year for insurances starting 1st of October 25.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm sorry.
Councillor Ramage.
I'm just curious on that, as someone who's worked in insurance all his life. Do you have a sort of a 3-year deal with who's the insurer, by the way? Is it Zurich, someone like that?
We have a number of insurers, so when we go to tender, we invite insurers to bid for specific loss.
This is a specialist area as far as insurance is concerned, the council.
Yeah,
There's only certain insurers who do it.
There are a limited number of insurers that are interested in council business, yes. So we invite it on an all lot basis or individual lots, and we take the best mix that we can.
Right.
So we have a number of insurers.
Yeah. And are they good at paying claims? Because that's the crunch of being an insurer.
So
hopefully you haven't had many that's come with it, put it like that.
So we continue to work with insurers, and perhaps this is something we can talk about.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, members. As there are no more questions, we're asked to note the progress and performance against the 2024-25 internal audit plan. So please can I take it that this report has been noted? Thank you, members. This report has been noted, so we will now eventually move on to agenda item 9, the internal audit charter for July 2024. This is set out on page 50 to 68 of tonight's agenda. And please, can I continue to invite Angie to set out this report?
Thank you, Chair. So the standards require that I have a charter in place and that I talk to the Governance and Audit Committee, the Audit Committee, and senior managers to confirm that it accurately reflects your understanding and expectations of internal audit. So the detail of the charter is it's meeting the public sector internal audit standards as they are. There are new standards, global internal audit standards, which have been released in January this year, but we are currently awaiting guidance, detailed guidance on their implementation within the public sector. So whilst this charter meets the current standards, I anticipate coming back to you with an updated one to reflect the new standards when that guidance is available. So on to the charter itself. So it gives a bit of background on the purpose and mission of internal audit and regulatory requirements, definitions. The board there, defined in paragraph 4, is the Governance and Audit Committee for Braintree Council. I referred in an earlier report to the ethical standards, the Code of Ethics, and there's more detail in section 5. Section 6 details the authority and the arrangements around that. The authority is set out in the Council's financial procedure rules, and the Governance and Audit Committee authorises internal audit to have full, free and unrestricted access to all functions, records, property and personnel pertinent to carrying out any engagement, subject to accountability for confidentiality and safeguarding of records. And there are other aspects under that section around resources and obtaining assurance. Section 7 covers the scope of internal audit activity. Section 8 is around independence, and I'm required to declare where staff have roles or responsibilities that fall outside the scope of internal audit, and to confirm to you that safeguards will be established to limit any impairments to independence or objectivity. So page 63 confirms the non-audit operational functions within the team. And for areas which are the responsibility of the audit manager and me, there is detail around the way we manage any potential impairments. So that's in reporting lines and looking for other means of providing that assurance. So the Audit Manager will confirm to the Governance and Audit Committee at least annually the organisational independence of internal audit and any interference and related implications in determining the scope of internal auditing, performing work and or communicating results. So that was part of the opinion which you had for last year. So a bit of information there on reporting arrangements, resources and fraud and corruption, the relationship with the external audit and other assurance activities, and the quality assurance and improvement programme. And again, Chair, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Angie. Do any members wish to speak on this item? Councillor Van Dolken.
Thank you. Angie, just a small thing. On the area where you talk about non-audit operational functions there, it says part of your activities involving maintaining records but not oversight of declarations of interest. I would have thought that would be a governance issue. Is there any particular reason why you've been saddled with that?
So the governance team do deal with those declarations in relation to members, but this is relating to staffing.
No, thank you for that clarification. So, members, we are asked to approve the Internal Audit Charter for 2024, and as we're asked to approve this, can I please ask for a proposer to move the recommendation? Councillor Ramage, and could I please have a seconder? Councillor Bohr. So, the recommendation has been moved and seconded. I will now put this to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate by a show of hands. Thank you. That is unanimous. The recommendations have been approved. So we will now proceed to agenda item 10, the Strategic Risk Register and Risk Management Policy and Strategy. This is set out on page 69 to 97 of the agenda, and can I re-invite Phil Myers to set out his report.
So, so this report really sort of is the final sort of bringing it to this committee is the sort of final stage of the last sort of review of the strategic risk register. So I'm sure many of the members around here probably attended the member development session that we had back in May, which was specifically looking at the strategic risks. And then following from that, the strategic risk register was then formally approved by Cabinet at its last meeting, and then say under our sort of governance procedures, it comes back to this committee as the final stage. So whilst there was, I think the members' evening again was seemed to be quite well attended, and again, you know, there's a lot of engagement on discussions of the risks. I think the risk register as it was presented at that time, there were no sort of fundamental changes that were being proposed, and therefore what's appended to this report is essentially the same register that you saw as part of that session. So so I don't think there's any need to sort of, go into detail through that. So I think members had the opportunity to discuss and question the risk owners at that time, and supported by the directors. The second part of the report is just recognising that we the framework is set in our risk management policy and strategy, and we did say that we would review that on an annual basis. Now, given that was quite significantly updated and refreshed at the last review, which was, I can't remember the exact date, but it was sort of probably within the last year or so. I think we're not, at this stage, we're not proposing any changes to that. So that's not appended to the report, but there is a link in the background papers back to that policy and strategy, so that members could, if they so wish, to sort of refresh their memory of what was contained in there. But this is just really confirming that at this stage we're not anticipating any change in that. We are developing some of our processes and procedures internally, and particularly around things like project management. We've got service reviews and the like. So that may be that that might result in us reflecting again on the policy. Part of the corporate peer challenge covered how the council managed its risks and the framework it has in place, and there were some sort of recommendations from the peer team, which was then picked up in the action plan that Cabinet approved as how the council would take forward the recommendations of the peer challenge. And so there were some items around risk management, and we are looking to maybe bring in some external help to do a sort of facilitated review of our strategic risks later in this calendar year. And I think that's timely as well, given that we've the new corporate strategy has been approved and is in place, and part of the strategic risks is around those risks that potentially have the potential to interrupt us being able to deliver on that corporate strategy. So it'll be timely that we do that review. I think members that have been involved with looking at the strategic risks and the strategic risk register probably note that the risk has remained fairly static. We did introduce one around landscape services recently, but so I think it's useful to have that sort of check and challenge helped by some expert input, and that's something we'll be doing later in the year. But otherwise, That's all I want to say, Richard.
No, thank you very much, Phil. Do any members wish to speak? Councillor Ball.
Yes, it was just a short question, really. Risk 3 planning. Given that there have been many changes are proposed under governments past and present to the planning regime, is there a likelihood that Risk 3 will change, certainly in the direction of travel?
I'm sure that will have to be looked at in the context of the announcement that we're getting that are coming thick and fast, and particularly around the sort of planning issues. So certainly as part of this was capturing the risks at a point in time, recognising that things will change and move on, and obviously we are as an authority we're tracking those announcements and how that will impact, and obviously if there are any immediate issues they will be addressed at the time, but I'm sure you will see at the next iteration of the strategic risk register that some of those issues and that will be reflected back through.
Okay, as there are no further questions, we're asked to note and endorse the Strategic Risk Register and note the risk management policy and strategy. Please can I take it that the report has been noted and endorsed? Thank you, members. This report has been noted. We will now proceed to agenda item 11, the Treasury Management Annual Report for 2023 and 24. This report is set out on pages 98 to 108 of the agenda. And thank you, Mark, for being ever so patient this evening, as always. But I invite Mark Jarvis, the Financial Services Manager, to set out the report.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors. Now, this is the draft Treasury Management Annual Report for the 23-24 financial year, which allows the committee to have an oversight of the council's treasury activities. Now, for those who are unaware, this is the final of 3 reports as part of the Treasury Management cycle for 23-24 financial year. At the start of the year, we start off with the Treasury Management Strategy that came to this committee in January, that sets the limits and the policy around the council's treasury activities. And that was then subsequently went to full council for approval in February. A mid-year report came in October, and obviously this is the final report of the series. Now, obviously I'll go through some of the main highlights of this report. The report is broken down into different sections, and I'll start off with the external context and a quick background. So at the beginning of the year, interest rates stood at 4.25%, then rose to 5.25%, where rates remain today. It was important to know that when we started writing this strategy, this was in mid-November, whereby we had the mini budget, but also interest rates were quite so much lower, around 3%. Obviously, the interest rate has increased, and this is a mechanism for the Bank of England to combat rising inflation. That at the start of the year was 8%, then subsequently fallen to 3.2% by March 24. Now, throughout the year, inflation remained higher than expected, thus causing interest rates to remain higher for longer. Obviously, this has been impacted and reflected in Treasury performance. Section 3 covers the local context. Now, as at the 31st of March, the Council held 56.3 million of investment, and this is a snapshot as at that date, with the majority of these funds from reserves where there's plans to spend this money in future years, but also we're holding a fair chunk of money in regards to NNDR and council tax that is due to be paid to our precepting authorities and to central government. Table 3.4 shows the position on our borrowing investments. So if I start off with borrowing, which is also covered in section 4, 5 and 6 of the report, the main point to raise on this is that there's no new borrowing that was undertaken throughout the year. The only transaction that happened was us repaying our existing PWLB loan, which we took out back in May 2022. In terms of investments, which is detailed in section 7, I'll start off with the council's pooled funds. Now, there's been no deposits or maturities throughout the year. However, the performance of these funds have showed a return of 5.3%, which is the highest that we've achieved since these were purchased back in 2016. Obviously, these funds can go up and down in value depending on, obviously, the markets. Now, although we've invested 19 million, these funds, as at the 31st of March 24, was valued at 21.2 million, giving us an unrealised gain of 2.2 million. In terms of our short-term deposits, the majority of activity was predominantly with the Debt Management Office, which is an agency of the Treasury Department. But at year-end, 7.5 million remained with the DMO, with 25 million in our money market funds, which is basically the facility to deposit our funds overnight and it's available next day. The overall return for our short-term deposits was 4.97%. In terms of the budget performance in table or section 8.2, obviously it shows that with the difference between last year and this year in terms of the amount of interest or investment income that we received. But compared to the budget, obviously there was a £1.5 million, but obviously that was, sorry, £1.5 million surplus, which after taking consideration of the budget requirement at December in regards to payable settlement. The only other thing I was going to cover was the compliance side. So obviously as part of the strategy, we set a number of limits to ensure that we're not exposed. So we can confirm that obviously we was well within our debt limit that we set out in 9.2. In addition, as part of our investments, we diversify our funds so we don't have all our eggs in one basket. And obviously it was ensured that none of those limits were breached during the year. Apart from that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Members? Councillor Wright.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, I take it the high interest rates is helping us in interest rather than being a negative.
Yes, so obviously as part of the KPI point earlier, obviously one of the main features was that investment income or high interest income has also mitigated some of the inflationary pressures across the council. Obviously that was recorded as part of the KPI report forward earlier. But yes, we have achieved additional income that has supported the budget in year.
Councillor Edwards.
Sorry, I think you may have just answered my question, but I was actually going to refer to the page 106, the 5.06 overall yield, which is nearly double last year's yield, the previous year's yield, which is obviously fantastic. What will that extra yield, obviously, was that accounted for necessarily in the budgeting process, and what will those funds now be reallocated to?
So the surplus on the investment income for 23-24 was part of the overall council's position as reported at the KPIs. It has mitigated some of the inflationary costs that we've incurred during that year, and obviously the overall surplus on the actual general fund obviously was taken as part of the general fund balance.
Thank you.
Councillor Van Dolken.
Thank you, Chairman. Mark, just a couple of things, if I may. Arling Close, our advisors, are they, would you say they're the main source of views on our pooled investments?
Yes, so obviously we receive monthly reports from Arling Close in terms of our pooled fund position. They're also obviously there to take any questions that we may have on any potential events in the markets that we want to ask any questions. So yes.
Okay.
Sorry, could you just turn your microphone on? Thank you.
6.2, other debt activity. In March 2024, the council procured 6 street cleansing vehicles, which was temporarily financed by internal resources until a review of the leasing options could be concluded. I don't quite understand how that works.
So when we acquire vehicles, we have the option to decide how we'll finance those, how we finance those vehicles. So as at the 31st of March, we had these 6 vehicles, and a decision still needs to be made of how we're going to finance. So we have the option up until 3 to 6 months to decide whether we're going to buy it outright, whether we're going to buy ourselves through PW borrowing, or alternatively set up a lease arrangement in order to lease those vehicles instead.
No, because the implication, or the way I read it, was that we would actually pay something, temporarily finance them by internal resources until a review of leasing options could be concluded, which I don't see how that works.
Yeah, so for this example, we actually bought those 6 vehicles using our own funds. Once we've done the financial due diligence, see what was the best option for the council in terms of financing these vehicles, we then instructed a lease company and they reimbursed us with that money, and then we pay a lease.
Right, thank you very much. Thank you.
And Councillor Ramage.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. Very good. Just a small question. Firstly, it's good to see that we're getting a great return on our funds. Could I ask, is there a period where we have to review what our funds, do we need to change them because some are not working so well? Because I recall years ago we used to do it every so many years. Is that still the case?
Obviously, we monitor our treasury investments on a daily, monthly basis in terms of the ins and outs and the positions and the values. So obviously we also use Arlene Close to help us in terms of the best way to actually invest our funds. We have to be careful in terms of our investments because obviously this is council tax money, so therefore the main area for us is security when we start looking at our investments. But yes, we do review it on a regular basis, and it will also feature as part of the budget setting process in 25-26, or for 25-26.
Okay, as there are no further questions, we're asked to recommend submission of the Treasury Management Annual Report for 2023-24 to full council. So please can I have a proposer to move the recommendation? Councillor Monday, and can I please have a seconder? Councillor Wright. The recommendation has been moved and seconded. I will now put this for the vote. All those in favour, please indicate by a show of hands. Thank you, members. That is unanimous. These recommendations have been approved. We will now proceed to agenda item 12, the annual governance statement for 2023-24. This is set out on pages 109 to 125, and please can I invite Phil Myers to set out this last report.
So I suppose this report is a little bit like a end of year report, really, on governance, and the annual governance statement is something that we're required to publish alongside our financial statements. So it's referenced in relation to the reporting period in which it's associated. So the annual governance statement, we've got the annual governance statement for 23-24, and we've got our financial statements, our statement of accounts for 23-24. So in a sense, so the committee, basically the role here for the committee, and I think this was touched on for those who attended the training session. I remember the annual governance statement was mentioned. So it's got an important document because it's really sort of drawing together a lot of the work that is being carried out across the year that demonstrates and shows that the council has a sort of robust arrangements in place around how it sort of manages its internal controls, its risks, and just its general overall governance framework. So the document draws on various sources of assurance and evidence, and no surprise that the work that Angie and her team do through the internal audit and that's reflected through the reports that come to this committee are very much a key part of that assurance element. But there are other aspects to review in our governance arrangements that sort of feed in and help draft the final, what is essentially the output from this process, which is the annual governance statement, which is appended to this report. So annually we will seek assurances from senior managers. So these are senior managers who have direct responsibility for service delivery, and therefore are key part of the ensuring that we do have key controls in place and that they are actually operated within their areas of responsibility. We do a bit of a, I suppose, a desktop sort of exercise in terms of comparing ourselves with best practice. And best practice in this sense is what is stated by jointly by the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy and the Society of Local Authority Chief Executives. So they have guided local authorities in the way that they should sort of organise and structure their governance frameworks and sort of set out how they see that should work, and essentially authorities will sort of benchmark themselves against that. So part of that is reviewing our arrangements and making sure that they continue to be in line with that practice. And then also there's the aspect of external inspections. Now, as we know, we've not been inundated with external audit reports for a while, but say we do receive other inspection reports that can provide assurance around some of our arrangements, and the statement, the annual government statement, makes reference to some of those. So we have inspections of how we're operating our operator's licence, which is obviously fundamental and key to the continuing to make sure that our fleet runs safely, but also external reviews of things like how we are protecting ourselves against cyber security and the likes. I think this year's annual government statement has also been helped by the fact that we also had the corporate peer challenge. So I think that's been again an opportunity to get some external insight into our assurance arrangements, and certainly in the final report of the peer team, they did make various comments around our governance arrangements that are reflected in the annual governance statement. So I wasn't going to go through the annual government statement in too much detail, because I'll take it that members will have had the opportunity to read the statement. So the annual government statement says attached to Appendix A, and it does run for several pages. The first section really is just setting out what our core elements of our governance framework are, and that's structured around those elements that SITFA and SOLACE say are key indicators of a good, strong governance arrangement. So you've got that running from sort of page 114 through to 119, and is sectioned up A, B, C, etc. down to G. Now, a lot of that information is probably fairly static, because we're not always changing our framework, but nevertheless there will be aspects in there that reflect up more recent developments, and we know we've had some changes to our constitution over the last year or two, particularly following the elections, and some new committee arrangements in place and the like, new portfolio arrangements with the cabinet. So that's sort of reflected in that first part. The second part of the annual government statement, which really starts on page probably 119, is that sort of review of the effectiveness. And that review, as I said, it's covered through three elements really. So we have a sort of an in-year review of mechanisms, and that sort of picking up activity that's happened during the course of the year that has impacted or has an impact on our governance framework or our systems of control and risk management. So it references the changes in the Constitution, and it talks about the work of the Corporate Scrutiny Committee that's occurred during the year. I think it's also it's useful to reference in there. So we had during the period of the review of this, we had the call-in of the garden waste decision, and I think I've been here a fair few years, and I think that, as far as I remember, that was the first call-in. So I think, in itself, that was a way we could actually demonstrate and test our sort of governance procedures, and I think there's quite a lot of learning from just going through that call-in process anyway, which will be helpful, if should the same be required in future. it also references things like the Corporate Policy Development Committee, which has had its sort of first year of operation and has been involved in a fair amount of work in that period. It also talks about the consultation and the stakeholder engagement that we've conducted, and there was a fair amount of that around the corporate strategy, and we had things like the new local council tax support scheme, which we did public consultation on, and some of our important strategies that came through, such as Live Well and those around housing. It talks about also the work of this committee, which is again a key element of the governance framework. Obviously recognising that we do have that gap in terms of the external audit, but that nevertheless, you know, there has been a certain amount of assurance that we've had from our auditors in the past, where they have provided reports in previous times, and I think I think we talked in here as well about how we've dealt with you know, an issue such as the Wethersfield, again, you know, something that is pretty unique and the like, and obviously we've been involved there in several legal challenges around with the Home Office, and it's just recognising that, you know, in participating or taking that action, that we've done that in a proper way, with taking proper advice at each stage, and being mindful and conscious of the potential costs that would be involved, and also the fact that you know, members have been kept up to speed on a regular basis with that. So the second part of evidence is, say, a reference to, you know, we had the opportunity with the corporate peer challenge, and say there are some various points made in the final report of the peer team that's set out on page 122, and I suppose, you know, the key things there, you know, talks about robust governance framework, you know, a constitutional foundation with sort of stability, you know, constructive cross-party working, but also acknowledge that, you know, we are working on improving and strengthening the scrutiny arrangements. And I suppose for this committee, I think the sort of point there, you know, that the peer team found that the Governance and Audit Committee were, you know, in their view, function effectively with very engaged members. So I think that was a, you know, good endorsement of how this committee is working, which is, as I said, is fundamental to the governance arrangements. And then the third part of the sort of review was around those assurance statements from senior managers, but also the report of the Angie as the audit manager, and her basically overarching assessment of, in her view, what are the how are the governance arrangements, and that was reflected in her annual report that she presented earlier. So within the statement, we also where we identify that there are issues or things that we need to be aware of or take some action around, we include that in the annual governance statement. So from at the bottom of page 123, you can see the sort of issues that were raised in the last annual governance statement, and then you've got a commentary there of what action was actually taken on that. And then in the section 4, you've got then sort of new issues that have been identified for the sort of coming year, or the current year, the 24-25, and those are around the corporate peer challenge. So following that, an action plan was approved by Cabinet, and so a key part of the work will be about ensuring that that's implemented, and there'll be a follow-up, well, now there's already been that's already now taken place. The follow-up review by the peer team, and also there'll be a sort of a report that will come through as a result of that. It's also identified that the local code of corporate governance, which is sort of the piece that sort of articulates our governance and risk management arrangements, that's probably due for review. It was last approved by, I think, this committee back in July 2021. So it's been highlighted that we ought to do a review of that, and so that'll be a piece of work that happens. We had some constitutional changes, and we've changed the key decision threshold. So as a necessity, that means that we also want to have a look at the financial procedure rules, so that to ensure that they're consistent. And again, it's probably several years now since they were last reviewed, so we'll be looking at those. Local audit reset. Well, clearly, from a governance point of view, we want to see that issue resolved and dealt with. So that will be part and parcel of the work for this year. And finally, as you're aware, through the Fit for Future transformation programme, we are looking at opportunities for collaboration and shared services with our neighbours and across sort of North Essex and the like. And as we do that, it will clearly be important that we ensure that there are proper governance arrangements in place to support any decisions or actions that arise through that. So I think the final bit in the statement is just then an overarching statement, and I think just sort of really confirming that from the review, the governance arrangements are deemed sort of fit for purpose, and have not been any significant detriment to how the council has been able to deliver services. So, subject, the committee's been asked to comment on this, and after this, the statement then goes to Cabinet for formal approval, and after that, then it's published on the council's website. So.
Thank you ever so much, Phil. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you very much, Chair. Phil, it's an area that I'm interested in. Thank you for all your work in this. One of these points I've brought up before, but the first one is a more informational one. You've just touched on it, the local code of corporate governance. In summary, what is that? And as you said, last updated in July 2021. Why do we need it, and do we have a plan as to when we're going to update it by?
So, so as I said, the local code of governance, that draws very much on the sort of best practice of Sitfa and Solace about sort of how the governance arrangements work and that. And then in that local code of governance, that's where we effectively reflect the arrangements that we've got in place locally. So it's sort of touched on in the first section of the annual governance statement there. I think as I said, it's flagged really for review in this coming year. So, and that will be something that will be brought back to this committee. So this committee will receive that review and have opportunity to comment.
Thank you. The second one, I have brought it up, I think, about a year ago at this time, and it refers to the area of, I think, reference on page 123, respect, challenge and scrutiny. And it's really an information thing. The area is, to me, it's of interest and possibly a bit sensitive. Do we have any information, and I don't know if this comes under your remit or possibly Angie's, do we have any information about the number of complaints made about, i.e. against councillors or by councillors, and the average time it takes to decide these? I don't mean by name, obviously, but by the main political groups.
So, so any complaints against members, that's the monitoring officer, so that'd be Kim. and her team who deal with that. And part of the reports back to this committee, Kim will be bringing back a sort of an annual report. The annual report of the monitoring officer that will cover information about the sort of numbers of complaints and the likes in an anonymised fashion.
Sorry, just for clarification then, thank you. Do we know what time of the year we would normally get that? Okay, thank you. Thanks very much.
Yep, so may see that at our next committee meeting. Councillor Walters.
Thank you, Chairman. I saw in here, hello Phil, how are you? I saw something in here about the community grant scheme continuing. I'm really pleased about that. Is that correct? I don't know what page I saw it on, but the community grant scheme. It's such a valuable thing for us councillors to be able to get involved in, because it helps so many in the community. Even a very small scheme, it really is very helpful. Is this going to continue? Because I really, really hope it does, because it's such a benefit to the communities, all the communities across the district.
Okay, so the reference in here is to the fact that we had the council community scheme in place for that 23-24 year. As you know, it's continuing into 24-25. Whether it continues into 25-26, as you know, that will be part of the budget conversations. So,
Thank you. Councillor Heath.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mine refers to the members' development on page 124 at the end, where it says there was a lot of new councillors last time, including myself, and there has been a lot of information over the last 15 months brought forward. I was just wondering if there's going to be like a reflection on the year for the people that have come in, and also areas that could be simplified, because there are definitely some questions asked at committee that I feel should have been asked in advance or sent via an email to get clarification on before. But I think there are a lot of members that don't really know the correct way to take it, so they're just waiting and raising it at a committee rather than bringing it forward. So I just wonder where we are on member development and how we can just update people.
Certainly not my area, other than that I know the member development evening programme and process is kept, I think that is an area that is kept under review by governance and see HR have an involvement in that through the member development officer. So I'm sure there will be reflections on the programme as it's been carried out since the elections, and I'm sure that will continue to inform how that goes forward. But I'm looking to Jess. I don't know if Jess, from a governance point of view, would have any further information through you, Chair, but...
Thank you, Phil. I can't really give you much more information on that at the moment, Councillor Heath, but if you want to email me or Emma outside and just put that request down, we can take it back for you. The member development programme is something that's arranged separately to governance, so all we do is keep an eye on what dates those are going ahead. We don't sort of get involved with, any reflections or processes there. So if you'd be happy to do that, and I'll look into that for you with Emma and Kim.
Yeah, that's it. By the very essence, I might be asking the question in the wrong place myself. That's what I'm saying.
It's certainly a worthwhile piece of work to be done, though. So, no, thank you, Councillor Heath. Councillor Van Dolken.
Thank you, Chairman. Interesting that Councillor Heath raised that point. I was going to say that I found this a cracking read, which is perhaps something we don't often hear. But no, quite seriously, it's a great aide-memoire or a précis, whatever you call it, of the year's events. And there were a couple of things I hadn't, the call in for the green waste, for instance. It's good to have that there, and as this is going, as if we approve it, it's going to Cabinet, I would make it my business to suggest that the report or us, perhaps in some other way, be sent around to members, because not everybody reads Cabinet reports. On a specific point, if I may, on page 115 in Appendix A, it says the Council demonstrates its openness by publishing the following, and there are a few things like the Constitution, Register of Interest, which we know can be found on the website. I can't ever remember seeing a pay policy statement, and I looked in the search engine of our website, and I looked on Google, and I couldn't find it. So I would suggest that it's not, if it's publishing it, it's very well hidden, and I think that perhaps some consideration could be given to that, and I for one would be interested in seeing it anyway. It also goes on to say the remuneration of senior officers. I had to look hard for that one. That's actually in the budget. So you know, it is published, but again, it's not. How open is open? I'm not quite sure. Anyway, I don't want to be petty about this, but I think the pay policy statement is one that I certainly couldn't find. That's all I wanted to say.
Would you like to make any comment on that, Phil?
No, I'll take that away. I mean, the pay policy statement it comes part of the budget report anyway, so it's one of the appendices of the budget report. But it should certainly be. So I know, you know, the search function on the website, you know, how that works. But I'll certainly take that away and make sure that we try and get higher visibility through the search function if we can.
No, thank you. Just to add, at the bottom of 122, I was particularly pleased to see the peer review, which Phil's already mentioned earlier, the outcomes of that, and that this committee would be seen to be working effectively and engaged. I think for some members that were here prior to May 23, we often had, well, certainly Phil, Angie and Mark could certainly recall, there were some evenings or many evenings where there'd be maybe 3 to 4 members, and we were just about core for most of our meetings. And so to see the room again, nearly full again tonight, is just a great thing to see. And I think the non-political nature of the meetings, actually getting down to business and talking about how to make our functions better for the residents in the district is the way that I believe it should be done. And I'd just like to thank you all for continuing to be engaged, asking those questions and actually proposing new things of officers, because I think actually that's the way it should be. So thank you. I just thought I'd highlight that, because to see that reported by the peer review, it's something that I think should certainly be acknowledged. So we are asked to recommend this governance statement to Cabinet for approval. So please could I have a proposer to move the recommendation? Councillor Munday, and a seconder, Councillor Wright. Would you be happy? Sorry, you did. Yeah, is that okay? Thank you. So this report has been moved and seconded. I will now put this to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate by a show of hands. Thank you. That is unanimous. So as this report is unanimous, the recommendation has been approved. We will now proceed to agenda item 13, which is urgent business. And you'll be pleased to know there is no urgent business this evening. So this item concludes our business for this evening. The next scheduled meeting is due to take place on the 9th of October. And as miracles may happen, we may see 2 signed off audits, but we won't hold our breath for that. So fingers crossed, we'll see, we hope. But thank you for all of your attendance this evening, and for those watching via the Council's YouTube broadcast. I will now close this meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee at 9:38. So thank you very much and good night.
I'd like to say that if we do get those to order, I'd be able to go